Welcome to Shone's Thoughts, far outside my own comfort zone. And why do I say that? Because today I'm going to try something a lot more unique. See, I recognize that I'm speaking to whomever I'm speaking to, but wherever you are in your world, normally I would sit down and speak to you from my place of just sitting. Yet today I've decided to do something different. And you'll see a unique frame here, which I'm going to talk about everything that's on here during the course of this live stream today. So, welcome, and I thank you so much for your attention. Love is love, as you can see somewhere in the frame right now. If you're looking, you'll find lots of love. So today I'm going to speak about something that I think is of the utmost importance. And it's one of the most amazing foods that I believe we have in North America anyways, in abundance in our grocery stores. And unfortunately, this amazing vegetable, or it's actually a herb, this herb has the ability to do so much for humanity. And I truly do believe that utilizing all of these vacant farms we have across North America, especially here in Canada, I drove by so many of them when I was traversing the province. So many of Canada's farms are empty, or at least they were when I was driving by. And so anyways, I feel that we could definitely benefit from growing celery on an abundant level, because celery has some very interesting, unique benefits that I myself have basically experienced. Yeah, I've had so many different benefits. And so today, obviously, I want to talk about celery. And here, if you see on the left, there is a cup with a beautiful cup, and it's containing 3 stalks of celery. And towards the right, you see a book that says Celery Juice, and it's by a man called the medical medium Anthony William. And he wrote this book, and I've often talked about it before, but today we're going to get a lot more in detail. And then in the back, if you look on the far left, we have our 2 fact checkers. And they're going to ensure that everything I say is, has been factually corrected. And then their other job, especially the chomper's job, is to make sure that no plants were harmed in the filming of this video. And that's essentially another thing I want to talk when it comes to celery and, things that I've chosen to share and do with the world when it comes to my experience with celery. So that those 2 characters, they're definitely going to do that. And then there's a little beaver with some sort of saying that I added in there. And essentially, as always, I've ensured that everything I put into the frame right now has a purpose and a reason for being there. Kind of like Hollywood movies, when they put things into the frame, everything, all the little symbols and the way sentences are staged in the actual movie itself all has a reason for being there. So anyways, I see the one person I had dropped out. You're going to miss an amazing and life-altering talk today. So let's get to it. Perhaps it's because of my microphone. Because I'll be holding a book today, I've put up 2 different mics, one attached to my shirt and the other one attached to where I'll be working from. And yet I'm not sure whether or not the audio is going to come through as good as it could. However, this is a very important talk that I guarantee I will be correcting the audio and re-uploading, because I foresee a time where we could have essentially a world of celery farms growing only celery, and this would truly benefit all of humanity. So let's get to it. So this book that I was saying, and putting it up here, Celery Juice by the medical medium. Now, this tells about his story with celery and how he came to understand that celery had miraculous benefits. And he gives a history. Now, in all of his books, he actually has and I mean he as in Michael, he actually has a part that talks about celery. And a lot of people, perhaps as the beginning of the book says, that celery juice is helping millions of people already. And we look at it and we're like, well, celery, this is just the vegetable that we barely even use. It's always in the grocery stores. Sometimes it tastes bitter, sometimes it tastes sweet, and we maybe add as in a garnish or have it in some sort of crab salad. However, celery houses some of the most miraculous vitamins and minerals, we'll call them, that can help the human body heal from so many different ailments. And it's right there, and a lot of times it's used as a snack food, which, by the way, when you eat it, as opposed to how I'm going to talk about it today, when you eat it, you don't necessarily activate the ingredients that we're going to talk about that are most beneficial. And so let's stop wasting it, because I did that a lot. I would buy a celery because I thought I needed to eat it. When growing up, I would always eat celery, or my mother would feed it to me and she'd boil it in water or steam it and then just serve it with like nothing on it. And so I kind of grew up not liking it, although it was one of the vegetables that I would eat. Yet steamed celery or boiled celery is definitely not very edible. And so with that being said, just kind of flipping through the book, Origins of Celery Juice, and he talked about how he had found the benefits of it, or came upon the benefits. Now, celery juice overall, and now I guess I should point out, is we are talking about celery, but it's the celery juice that is the beneficial part. And it's the one that allows all the nutrients to essentially flow into your mouth. Now, we have little glands that are in our mouth that sometimes help certain nutrients get directly into our body rather than having to go through our digestive system. And so juice is always a very beneficial way of getting the nutrients from something. But when it comes to celery juice has something that I refer to, or he has referred to, as living water. It has a certain amount of ingredients, and one we're going to talk about, not in detail, but mention anyways. And of course, you can do your own discovery, whether it's reading the book or going online and searching it. But celery juice has, when prepared properly, a nutrient called sodium clusters, and these little cluster salts, and they do wonders for the body. There's also other micronutrients and different antioxidants that are in celery itself. There's a very bioavailable vitamin C that is said to be in celery. Now, just so we disclaim, I guess, is what I'm sharing with you today are my personal experiences, my research, and we're actually going to make a little bit of celery juice too. And yeah, it's my experience, and I'm not a doctor, or I don't have these certificates for nutritionist or anything. I just want to share with you my own experiences. And so getting back to it, celery juice has all these different very beneficial ingredients, and it allows our body to utilize them and to heal from many different conditions. And when I say many different, I mean the list is long of how many different situations in your life, from stress to illnesses to symptoms and all these other things that they claim that we have as problems, the ones that perhaps aren't even going to happen for decades to come, and they got us worrying about them now. It also helps detoxify the body, and that simply means helps the body remove all the toxins and impurities from the food and the drink that we eat and drink. So now, there's a couple things when we are looking at the benefits. Like I said, the most important one being, in my opinion, the sodium cluster salts and the different types of microtrace minerals. There's different plant hormones and electrolytes within celery and digestive enzymes, and that's essentially going to help your body break down the food. There's different things that are going to help you with even things such as the Epstein-Barr virus or lots of other different parasites or issues. The vitamin C is phenomenal. And of course, you're hydrating your body. You're adding water. One of the things that I do often when I first get the celery is I'll take the stalk and I'll put it in water, because the celery, when you see it in the store, when it's sitting in the store, like on the shelf for you to purchase, it is still alive. It is still growing. It's literally living while it's sitting in the area to pick it up at the celery place. And why I bring that up is because one of the things that I've loved to do, and I've done it very often, is after I use the outstalks of the celery plant, I keep the 1 or 2 pieces in the inside, and that's what you see in the cup on the left right now. You're seeing the stalks of celery, and these are the ones that I've kept, and I've put them in water, and they still continue to absorb that water. And if you put them in the sun, they'll continue to live as plants. And I believe that all life is important, and so therefore this gives the celery plants more time to live. And then some unique thing that I discovered was that the celery plant would actually start, in some cases, regrowing roots. And I'm not sure how that or why that happened. Obviously, the plant is still living, but I mean, I'm not sure of the conditions that I created in order to allow that to happen, because it only happened the occasional time where these little small roots that were visible enough for me to see before. If I left it too long in the water, the celery would rot and flies would get it. If I let the water dry out, if there was too much water, like, I'm not sure of what factors came to be. However, I've had very great success with replanting the celery, and the celery essentially on a balcony getting a second chance to live its life, to, I don't know, be food for slugs and stand and grow tall in the sun. I actually had one celery plant that grew to, I think it was about 4 feet. I took some pictures of it before, and I've had a lot of success with other plants, but yet sometimes, they don't work. Maybe I put it or plant it in a planter beside something or beside itself, and it's sad and it ends up dying anyways, or in a sense, it turns back into compost for that particular plant pot. So that's good as well. So definitely a lot of different things in my road to learning about celery. And so with that being said, like I said, I want to talk about the actual juice itself. And I'll showcase more of my celery plants. And that's where those 2 guys in the back, that's where the kind of joke is. They're making sure no plants get harmed, because when you're taking the stalks off of the celery plant, you are essentially taking the outside branches of the plant off. And as I mentioned before, this particular plant is a herb. It's not a vegetable. And so when you buy it from the store, it essentially looks like this generally, at least in North America and what I've seen and what I've had. And then I'm breaking the stalk off at the bottom and basically, essentially breaking pieces off like this. Now, there obviously are lots of different juicers, and the juicer that you do use is important, because when you juice celery, in order to get that sodium cluster salt, it's ideal, and I say ideal because, in the world, we always do what option is the best at that time. And so ideally, you would use a cold pressed juicer, and that's what I have here as an Omega. And funny enough, when I bought it, before even researching which one was the one that Michael, the medical medium, had, he ended up using the same one. And so I bought this at Canadian Tire. Of course, you can go wherever you want to do, but it's important, ideally, we are using a cold pressed juicer. And what that does is when it's juicing the actual celery, like when it's pulling or extracting the juice out of that, it's not denaturing any of the the nutrients that we want, which is most importantly the sodium cluster salts and the vitamin C and other antioxidants. And those are what's going to go into the body. Now, why I mentioned the glands in your mouth is when you're drinking, you can of course just gulp it down. That's one way of doing it. Or you can let it stay in your mouth, and then some of the micronutrients are going to have an option to get down into the digestive system directly from the mouth. And so see, this is what I was referring to. So this is the inside of the plant, and this still is the plant. And I'm going to be putting it in with the rest of these guys here, and it will start to turn green. And then when it gets to a certain point, I'm going to go and plant it back in soil so it can continue living and adding oxygen and doing all that lovely stuff that plants do in our world. And yeah, so with that being said, we wash the celery itself, preferably washing it in water that is filtered, or if you don't want to waste so much of filtered water, then essentially washing it with tap water and then washing it off with some filtered water. And then it's important, I feel, that sometimes if there's what's called a rotten part or like some damaged part of the plant, cutting that bottom piece off might be beneficial. Now, back to what I was saying about the celery. So when you cold press the celery juice, you're allowing less denaturing because you're not using a heated process. When you're using any sort of blender to juice it, one method is to throw the celery in a blender and then juice it in the blender and then squeeze out the actual juice. However, when you do that, you are essentially heating up the juice and you're removing some of the you're moving the most important chemicals. You're denaturing the sodium cluster salts, and it's important that those stay active as long as possible. And we'll get to in later speaking about when do we do all of this stuff, because that really matters about when you drink the juice. You're drinking it instantly after you have juiced it. And you're allowing all those nutrients not only to not be denatured by the higher speeds of some of these very strong juicers. Like when you go to Booster Juice, for example, they have these juicers that you're putting in the celery and the zoom, zoom, zoom. Like it's all done really, really quickly. But then what's happening is you're damaging the actual nutrients which are in the celery itself. And so when you use the cold pressed juicer, it's a slower process that's extracting the juice without having to heat it up like a blender or those high speed juicers. And so now when you have the celery, and I'm just going to cut a couple of them, I'm not going to do the whole juice amount that you would normally drink. Just do 2 stalks so you can kind of see how it all goes. So nice thing about these juicers, and I apologize, I don't know how the microphone's going to pick it up. I might mute it if I have to redo the video, so I'm not going to say anything while I do it, but you'll notice that it's not as loud as a lot of those other juicers. So that's how loud it sounds. And then with this juicer, I didn't have to do any more cutting. If you're using Okay, so I'm just going to leave it right there. So what you want to do with the juice is drink it immediately. And that's how easy it was to make very powerful drink to help heal our bodies from the inside out. And now, as I said, it's very important to drink, so you drink it right away. As I just drank that right away. And now, when do we drink this? When do we do this? Well, in the book, it says, and I definitely can confirm it works best when done in the morning when you first wake up, before there's any brushing of the teeth, before there's any drinking of any liquids. Water might be okay, but it would be ideal if the very first thing that you consume into your body is the celery juice, and then you wait for at least 30 minutes afterwards. That will give you by far the best benefits to the body. So that's helping in so many different areas. And I will leave the book or medical medium's website. Maybe he goes into more detailed. I just thought it's definitely worth mentioning this because for my own personal healing journey, this helped clean so many different things. It helped break away from drinking coffee because it helped detoxify the body, and it helps reduce the need to want to drink it. It helps from detaching from, sugars and detaching from cravings, because a lot of cravings usually are because our body's still holding on to it and it wants more of it. And so this helps our body, which our whole body system is really designed in order to rid ourselves of whatever we intake. And when we stop suppressing the different issues like the nasal and other things, and we get our stomach flowing, then, and I don't mean stomach flowing, I mean we start excreting all of the backed up feces that are within us. And that's one of the biggest reasons why I began trying celery juice, is because I wanted to relieve myself of constipation issues. And boy, does this relieve you of constipation issues. If you get in the habit, and I highly recommend you doing this for like 7 days in a row or 14 days in a row, or preferably 30 if you're on a healing journey. If you do this, after you do it, a lot of times, especially as the digestive system gets more fluid, you will start to have large diarrhea sessions, which are great because they're helping get rid of a lot of the feces that's been stuck there for such a long time. And what I discovered is that's where a lot of our illnesses or symptoms of illnesses come from, is from when we have so much stuck in our stomach, and that all of that undigested or unprocessed food, it essentially starts to rot, releasing gases, and it releases essentially food for all of the negative, or you will say the parasitic stuff that lives in our, like the bad bacteria. We essentially want, in order to have a healthy digestive system, we want to have a very positive bacteria growth and food for it to thrive, rather than a lot of this breaking down of these, food that we shouldn't be eating, I'll say. That stuff stays in there and it breaks down more. Now, the celery juice is going to help the body naturally want to let go of everything, and it'll start to help after a while of cleaning perhaps the walls of the inside of your stomach, and then relieving a lot of that gas and bloating and constipation that we get. So that's how I first came to understand it. And then I realized the benefits of the actual helping with things, even like the common cold. Just giving our body the vitamin C that comes from a bioavailable. Now, what bioavailable means is that the body has an easier ability to retrieve or utilize that vitamin C. So bioavailable, the higher the bioavailability, means the body's going to have an easier time to utilize it. And every process that happens in the body, it requires or releases energy. So this is just essentially one of the best ways of getting vitamin C, rather than having to pop a pill that came from some place that you were uncertain of. now we know it's coming from directly to us in a better form, easier to absorb, and it's coming from a plant that's right in front of us. So one of the things that I'll probably talk about, and I've talked about recently yesterday on my podcast, and I invite you to go back and listen to that if you haven't already, but this is one of the most important and definitely one of my own experiences of, how I wanted to come to heal. Now, to, I guess, in a sense, summarize, we want to drink celery juice, preferably in a cold presser. We want to clean it, cutting off the edges. We want to drink the celery juice right away. Now the question is, how much? The medical medium says 16 ounces every day. I drank whatever it is the juice created for me. I didn't worry as much. But if you're looking for healing modalities, and you're looking to heal from something, then starting with 16 ounces and working your way up to 32 ounces a day depends, of course, on you. But I'm of the mind that any amount is going to be helpful. So you get one stalk, juice one stalk, drink one stalk. But just as it's important that you drink it as soon as possible, because the micronutrients, the sodium cluster salts, they start to break down, and within 24 hours, most of them are gone. And then, of course, if you're cold pressing them, you're going to get maximum nutrition from it. If you're using any of the other ways, which is still good, because something is better than nothing. And then building up and always being better is a great way to look at it. With the actual scraps, as you see, they're coming out of there, you can take those, put those in a compost. I flush them down the toilet. I feel it adds very positive energy to our water system, and it's probably cleaned out sometime. But this, I would imagine, the more people doing that will start essentially helping clean our local water systems maybe too. I have great dreams about living in a world where things are so much nicer and better. And so with that being said, we're going to drink it in the morning. We are going to drink it right away. We are going to drink at what we can, 16 ounces to 32 ounces on a daily basis. Daily being, once again, the ideal thing, that you're doing it daily. I wonder if my voice is echoing now. I'm wondering if that was a concern. I hope not. But anyways, I keep seeing people come and go, so I really shouldn't be looking at the camera while I'm talking, distracting my train of thought. So we're doing all those wonderful things. We're doing it on a daily basis, and our digestive systems are cleaning. Our symptoms are being released a lot easier. We are healing from several different things, whether it's depression or some sort of body issue. Because in a sense, when we get our digestive system flowing better and more properly, which the celery juice, you will feel right away those releases of, what the stomach has been holding on for a long time. When we're releasing all that, our body is better and easier able to create the energy. So we create more energy when we're having to use the energy that we have in our body to break something down. So for instance, when you go to McDonald's and you eat what you're buying at McDonald's, well, when you eat that, you actually require, there's a bill for extra energy that's required in order to break that food down. Food for us was supposed to be utilizing the food, receiving the energy from the food. It goes through our mitochondria system and does some other things, whatever, but you were supposed to gain the energy from the food. But that's not necessarily what happens today. A lot of these processed foods, they are requiring energy from our body in order to even get rid of that. And so sometimes if you don't have enough energy, if you haven't absorbed enough that gave energy, and the most of the food you're eating requires energy, then the body is going to have a harder time to let go and release that type of, those foods. So celery juice is going to make it so easy for you to, get better health. Now, I've told celery, I've told people, so many people about celery juice. A few have tried it, or a few have told me they tried it. Most, just said no. And so I thought I'd talk about some common excuses that I've heard and, I've perhaps even experienced using myself in the past, because just like everything, when we hear it the first time, we might not necessarily start doing it right away. And even if we do it, we might do it, as I did, intermittently, not doing it on a regular routine. However, if you can jump past that hurdle of, you know, doing it, oh, I'm going to do it once and then skipping 3, 4 days and then doing it again, and then suddenly realizing, oh, it's not helping, and then giving it up because it didn't do anything. When in all actuality, if you had done it for all 7 of those days, there would have been massive changes. And then you would have continued pushing through, when it got challenging for those days that you didn't have celery and had to go to the store at 7 in the morning, like I did the other day, and get the celery and then walk it home and juice it before doing or drinking or having anything else. Those are the days that are the challenging ones that you're pushing through. And so if you can skip and bypass and just make a commitment to do it, like even go and get a couple days celery in advance and buy ahead of schedule so that you never run out, that's definitely going to be and definitely going to help these common excuses. Now, the first common excuse that a lot of people have talked about is, I don't like the taste. Now, celery juice, yeah, it doesn't have the best taste. There are, when it's in season, harvest properly, I would say. Celery, when, I'm just gonna let my cat in now. She's been meowing most of this report or this thing. Now, if you get the celery when it is in season, or occasionally I'll have it and it'll be perfect and it'll be nice and sweet and juicy and fresh, that's an awesome way to drink it. Then you have the stuff that I bought today. I literally just bought this today, and it's very salty. And of course, I'm not sure which one is better, because the sodium cluster salts are salts. So perhaps these ones are, maybe the salt's more available than when it's sweet and the salts are less. I'm not sure. Plants go through their process of ripening, and there's a lot of fake ripening out there in order to make things look better. So spraying chemicals and such on the plants in order to help push the natural process of ripening. So I'm not sure which one's better. Definitely go look in that medical medium. I haven't read the whole book. I just read the important parts, and then I was off on my journey to experience it. And so there's a lot of things that are healthy for you that don't taste good. Yet, if it doesn't taste good, holding your nose is one of the possibilities, and then gulping it down. However, it really is up to you of how you get it in, as long as it's cold pressed and it's juice. Now, a lot of people said, oh, I don't have the money for it. Well, we spend an awful lot of money on the medical system. So this would be basically a strategic, whatever the word I'm looking for, in order to not have to spend that money. But it's not just that. When we live healthy lives, and when we're able to find something as easy as this to add to our daily routine, we are able to therefore spend less time in bed being ill. So that means, however we look at it, having more time to do what we're doing at a stronger strength. And believe me, that when you get into the habit of doing this, your amount of energy will go up. And so perhaps even the need for coffee, or for however you stimulate your body. A long time ago, in order to get energy, I would often drink all of those energy drinks. And even with those energy drinks, I would sometimes have 2 or 3. Like, I really needed energy. I was having a lot of energy removed from my system, it seems, by, well, whatever it was. And I was therefore using the energy drinks, but always crashing. This will allow your body to release those toxins so that your body can operate at its natural high energy level. And so when we look at the cost of celery, now it can range. I've bought stocks at $10 a stock, having a lot of weight, and they probably had a lot more water in it when they first got it from the farms. Or you never know, they might actually put them in water before they put them out in order to get the most weight from it. Because as I mentioned before, when I first get the celery plants, I put them in a plastic, or not a plastic, a bowl of water in order to allow them not only to continue living while they're there, but also to absorb that water. So perhaps it increases the amount of, living water that I'm able to get. So worrying about whether or not how much money it costs to do this on a regular basis, just essentially do your best and realize that this is an investment in your future health and everything that you do from that point. Now, another one obviously is the diarrhea. Planning your day is important, and essentially planning your day with this is important. Perhaps getting up a half an hour earlier or an hour earlier, doing the juicing and the stomach movements and the bowel movements or whatever. Maybe that is a great idea to prepare so that it doesn't affect your day. And so some people have felt that whole situation, talking about pooping as being an uncomfortable topic, there's been a lot of programming about our body and how we interact and how we listen to our body. And one of the main programs I feel is about how we feel or think about going to the washroom. And so letting it go is kind of like a celebratory or a very celebration, like letting all of that constipation go, because we are on the road to being better people, and that's letting all the other crap go. Another issue is I don't have time. Well, we waste an awful lot of time. So perhaps looking at where you waste time or where people waste time, and then reutilizing that time and rescheduling it. As I mentioned before, waking up an hour early. Well, then it's balancing that with going to bed an hour early. See, and then taking that hour out of whatever it is that you were doing the day before and then reconstituting it so it's of benefit. So not having time really is a huge excuse that so many people use about so many different things that would be benefit of them. I often used it. I don't have time for healing. That's really what you're saying. And yet we then want to pop a pill or find an easy, method to make things better rather than preparing for and essentially, well, for some reason I can't figure the word, but it'll come to me right after, I'm sure. But a lot of things when it came to all herbs and, they sometimes referred as Chinese medicine. So the plants themselves having all of these benefits. Plants have so many of the nutrients and the energies that a lot of the different pharmaceuticals are found from. And so plants are the natural way to get it. And, when we say we don't have time and we look at even popping open a pill of vitamins, whether it's from a health food store or your superstore, your super shopping mart or whatever, that's just, it's a cop-out. It's a common excuse, honestly. And so that is, me talking to myself. So realizing that it was my excuse, believing I didn't have time, believing that extra 10 minutes that it took to do that. And then there's the excuse of, oh, well, now I got to clean things up. And, that was another one of my excuses. The cleanup. Because of the cleanup, I didn't really want to do the process, when in all, if I invest that time and if you do it for 30 days, you're going to notice amazing results. You can possibly stop using some of those pills that you use or vitamins or whatever. And that's the road to New Earth. So when a lot of people out there are looking for the changes and they want to see things changed, well, the changes come when the changes we've made in our lives. And for me, celery juice was one of them. And it's something that, as I said, I think that one day, maybe soon, sometime this year, that we'll start converting large areas. Like one of the projects that I imagined or envisioned as part of my blueprint series was to create biodomes for farming. And that was under the idea that we're going to live in a similar world where we require to get our nutrients, that we get it from plants and sources of eating, as opposed to just primarily the sun. So I imagined that rather than having or living in a world where everything comes from somewhere else, that we create biodomes. And in one of these biodomes, I imagine it just being exclusively celery, so that we can start detoxing and we can start, as a community, as a world, start ridding ourselves of all these chemicals and these different metals, heavy metals and other toxins, and the food for all the bacteria, and then rid all of that bad bacteria out of our body. And that celery juice can be farmed exclusively to give away to everyone. Like, that's how important I think that celery juice could be, if it's for, you know, all the people or the climates that it can be grown in, and those areas and those people around them. If it can be just naturally farmed, sure, but done in a way that it's on a massive scale, so that we could just collectively group it. Anyways, I'll tell that whole story later. So I want to thank all of the people who joined for however amount of time that they joined for. I truly appreciate any and all attention. And like I said, I'm not sure whether or not me using the 2 microphones, this is the first time I did that. I wasn't sure, you know, the logistics of everything and what I was actually going to show and do. This is a whole new concept and idea for me. However, this is something that I definitely feel is resonant with how I want to share, and setting up frames and cameras. And it's not about what's in the camera till it needs to be in the camera, and you get to see all these lovely things. And we've got our fact checkers in the back left corner. No plants were harmed, and you know, they're going to check all their facts with me. Those are some Lego creations that my son and I put together. The chomper, or the piranha plant from Mario, and forgot that guy's name. Groot. Yeah, little Groot. So thank you so much for sharing your time with me. And if you've had celery, if you've tried this juicing process, let the comments know what you think. And if you're gonna do it, drop in the comments. If you right now think, hey, this is a great idea, I wanna be healthy, I want to rid myself of the EBV, the Epstein-Barr virus, I wanna get rid of that out of my body, and I want to stop having all these symptoms that I have all the time. If that's you, make a commitment to yourself and state it in the comments. Write your determination to make the decision and do it, and like put it out there, put it in the comments. And then there's something concrete that you now have that to reflect upon, and make sure you do it and enjoy the process. Do something so it makes it fun. I know getting up in the morning when I first was doing it, and it's like you're getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning, you've got work, you've got all these other things to do, and now you're adding another task. And to do it before, like to drink it before, that means you have to have it all done, drank, 30 minutes, wait, and then drink your morning coffee, your morning tea, your morning soda pop. Hopefully not. Definitely no iced tea. Lipton iced teas or whatever, like those sweet iced teas. Like, stay away from all of it, because when you, I guess this is some more tips about it that I'll conclude with. When you're drinking it, you want to drink it straight. You don't want to add anything. You don't, and the reason why you want to drink it with before you drink anything else is you want to allow all those cluster salts to go in and start doing things, and they'll work pretty instantly. However, if you mix it with ginger or lemon like they do, or apple juice like they do at the different stores that you buy it in, then they start automatically clashing, and they automatically start working. And when they work, they break down and they don't work anymore. So it's not like a continuous function that they're just going to hang out. They'll actually start breaking down the apple juice, for example. Like they'll start working and intermingling with this. So when you drink it, it has to be straight. Try to drink it quite quickly, and enjoy and be ready if you're in the process of getting ready to go to the washroom when needed. So I guess I just needed to add that in. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I definitely want to hear about your experiences in the comments. And yeah, thank you, and go do a lot of no thing with me. Have a nice day.